Hey guys, welcome back to JRPG Academy. In our previous lesson, we discussed the Magic Pixie Dream Girl and Cool Girl tropes as they were used in Final Fantasy VII. This week, we're going to shift gears a bit and talk about gameplay. I feel that gameplay is the second most important thing to any JRPG. The overall experience can be shaped by how great the story and the combat is. So it's important to talk about those things as well. So I feel this episode is going to be dedicated to one of my favorite battle systems of all time, Valkyrie Profile. In coming weeks, I will discuss probably a slew of different combat and gameplay systems used in JRPGs, but for today we're going to discuss this one in depth because I feel as though it's probably the most ingenious way to do turn-based combat that isn't stale or boring, but has its own personality to it that's really unique to any other game I've ever played. Alright, so the basis of the battle system is that you're given an array of characters, up to 4, and each character is assigned a different button. They're able to attack as long as they have enough actions, and up to 3 actions can be used by each character, except for mages, unfortunately. Every character can attack on the screen at the same time, and every character has individual attacks that they will use to build up your purification meter, which will allow you to do soul crushes. Your soul crush is basically your super awesome amazing attack. The battle system has evolved quite a bit over the subsequent prequels and sequels for the series. Right now you're watching gameplay from Valkyrie Anatomia, The Origin, that was released on iOS and Android in 2019. One of the things I liked about this version is that instead of pressing buttons, you just press the touchscreen of each individual character, which still has the same premise of each character having a certain amount of attacks they can use. After you build up your meter, which is your purification meter, you're able to do some of the big crazy attacks. But unlike the previous games, this game allows you to do all 4 at the exact same time. You're also able to do special attack skills as well, depending on the weapon that you have equipped. But the main draw of this game is the timing of the attacks and stringing along really incredible combos together with all the characters on your screen, which I always thought would be really incredible because as a fighting game fanatic and player, this game definitely appealed to my sensibility. And also just the overall scope of how the gameplay was devised, which seemed so ingenious to me. A game that was inspired by Valkyrie Profile was Super Neptunia RPG. One of the things about this game that I did like was that it allowed you to have different formations, and those formations gave you different attacks and abilities that you set for each one, which made the gameplay a little bit more strategic. However, one of the drawbacks to it is that you have a active gauge that you have to use, so each individual attack takes a certain amount of gauge. So unfortunately, you're not able to do all the attacks you may want at one time, depending on how many points each attack takes. However, it does have the good old break attack, which is pretty much your soul crush. And unfortunately, this game lacked in the visual department, so a lot of the attacks don't have the same power and oomph that Valkyrie Profile had. And I think a lot of it has to do with the animation style and the overall art direction to it. It's still a good game, but I do think that they need a little more refinement, a little more time to put more effort into the animations for a lot of these moves, because they really do lack emphasis and actual strength behind them. They look a little like they don't have much depth to them. Still a fun game though, nevertheless.
Behold my true strength! Stars above, guide me to victory! Starlight Sword!
Alright, so next up, talking about Fallen Legion. This game also retains the active time battle system that's really similar to Super Neptunia RPG. And one thing they did add that was really cool was the guard button. The guard button and the guard mechanic itself is really important to the gameplay for this. The guard button allows you to guard attacks or parry them, and parry them gives you more AP to do more attacks with your characters. So it's really important to be strategic in how you block and attack. Defensive options is something that I don't think is really used in these type of games very much, so seeing it in this game was really well done. One of the drawbacks to this game that I didn't like was the overall aesthetic of the game and how the animations look. They really do lack in the animation department. They look a little stilted sometimes, and they don't have any cool, grandiose, big attacks either. It's really grounded and a little bit more subdued in the looks department. But overall, it's still a fun game. I thought the gameplay pacing of it was really well done, and the overall animation as far as some of the attacks look really cool, but just aesthetically, I think it could have been done a little bit better. With a little bit more polish, it could have been an incredible game. Next up, we're going to talk about Exist Archive. Now, this game was actually created by the people who were a part of the development of Valkyrie Profile, so I had very high expectations for this game. I was actually extremely excited for this when I heard they were making a new game inspired and in vein of Valkyrie Profile from the actual developers who were a part of that development. However, I don't think this game was executed very well, and I think that it lacked in so many areas as far as gameplay is concerned. I did like the fact that you're given 4 characters and it feels like Valkyrie Profile, but it's lacking in the whole execution department. I think the way the camera worked and just the overall the pacing of the game just fell a little flat, and a lot of the attacks just looked a little washed out too. And visual cues are really important for games like this because you need that in order to know when your next attack should go, when you should follow up with another attack and whatnot. And then the defense part of this game I wasn't really a fan of because it felt like it was just tacked on, and it didn't feel like it was really well fleshed out because it doesn't give you a whole lot of like cues of what you actually should be doing as far as defending yourself in the defensive round. Overall, it did give me a little bit of the feeling I had when playing Valkyrie Profile, but it was just lacking in a lot of departments, especially in the grandiose attack, which is their Demon Greed. It's supposed to be a soul crush, but it just doesn't have the same impact. It just felt like it was really something was lacking. It was just lacking overall. I think just the visual aesthetic of this game just really took away from the overall experience of gameplay. Of all the games that were inspired by Valkyrie Profile, I think that Indivisible did the best job of being a spiritual successor. One of the things that made this game really incredible was the animation style. The animation 2D just looked so pleasing and gorgeous. And it reminds me of Valkyrie Profile as how it was a 2D sprite-based game. The animation style, along with the incredible gameplay, just knocked it out of the park for me. Now, one of the things they did add to this game, which is what a lot of games have been doing with this particular type of gameplay, is being active time battle system, which I think is cool. It does make the game a little bit more fast-paced when you have active time battle system versus being turn-based. However, one of the things I didn't like about this game was their super big attacks while they were big, they just didn't have the same level of epicness as Valkyrie Profile did. Like, they were there and they're apparent, but they just don't look as incredible as Valkyrie Profile. But that may just be a personal thing with me. I just feel like if you're gonna do a super move, it needs to be super, in my opinion. But overall, I think that Indivisible did the best job of recreating that Valkyrie Profile feel, and it feels way more fast-paced and more like a fighting game than any of the other games presented early. And visually, it's just gorgeous, and the music is incredible, and just like the gameplay itself is just well executed. This game is supposed to come out on the PS3, but I see why it took so long to have such a long development cycle, because doing sprite-based 2D animation right now takes a long time, especially to do it well. So I understand why it took so long, but it's well worth it because this game came out incredible. This is exactly what type of game I wanted and desired and always knew could exist if done correctly, and I think Lab Zero completely knocked it out of the park, and I hope that they do more games like this in the future. Alright, so that concludes our lesson for today. I still think that Valkyrie Profile's battle system is probably one of the easily top 5 battle systems ever created for a JRPG, and I hope that more games decide to be inspired by it in the future, or maybe we get an actual console version of a new Valkyrie Profile game. That would be nice. Alright, so for your homework for this episode, what do you think of the Valkyrie Profile battle system, and have you played any of the games I mentioned earlier? If you haven't, are you not interested in playing any of them? What are your thoughts on this type of battle system? Let me know in the comments below. Also, please like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next lesson.